see everybody. Are you guys from Lancaster area? Oh, from this area? Awesome. Can you guys hear me okay? I don't even know if I need this, but so basically I wanted to kind of give an overview. My shop talk or whatever is titled Diversifying Your Skill Sets for a Successful Career. Is anybody here, like, I'm a young guy here, are you guys looking forward to maybe having a career in music in some aspect, or has a career in music or in some way, right? So what I want to do is just kind of talk a little bit about kind of like three sections. I'm going to read a little bit, I'm going to talk a little bit. If you guys want to ask questions, like, feel free to do that. But three sections, I want to kind of talk about what I do now. I want to talk about the process I went through to get to that point. And then I want to talk about some things I learned kind of along the way to get there. And specifically talking about being a freelance musician or being a freelance educator and performer. So as Adam said, my name is Brent Behrenshausen. I actually live in Reading, Pennsylvania, just 25 minutes down 222. I have a degree from Westchester University in music education, where I studied percussion for 4 years. And then I got my master's degree in percussion performance from Duquesne University in Pittsburgh. And I was there for 2 years, and great city there in Pittsburgh. I've been able to, since then, build a career as a performer, as an educator. I graduated from Duquesne in 2011, so it's taken some time, and that's part of my talk, is to, like, that building a career in music is a process. It's not just like you take your resume and you go, here's my resume, my diploma, like, give me a job. Like, you have to kind of build a career step by step. So this talk is to help, like, enlighten you on the steps you could take to build your own business. And I really believe in diversifying your skills and what you can do to create more opportunity for yourselves. So what do? I actually, as Adam mentioned, I teach at 4 colleges. I'm a professor at 4 different colleges. Westchester University is my major employer. Elizabethtown College, Lancaster Bible College, and Immaculata University are the 4 places. That's like my day job. So at those colleges, I teach percussion lessons. I teach methods courses. I teach direct percussion ensembles. And I actually teach the percussion for all their music camps as well. In addition to that, I have a private studio out of my home where I teach over 20 students and various levels and ages. And as a freelance performer, I currently play with groups with, like, the Philly Opera, the Philadelphia Ballet, Reading Symphony, Lehigh Choral Arts in Allentown, the Northeastern Pennsylvania Philharmonic in Scranton, and a few more. I perform with artists like the Celtic Women Singers, Irish Tenors, the Celtic Thunder, Clay Aiken, and I've been on recordings for NFL Films, LL Cool J, and the Bach Choir in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. So all that stuff I do and I've done, like, it didn't happen like I did it overnight, right? I had to develop my career over time. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about, like, the steps that I did after graduating from college, what I did to try to build my business. The first thing I did, like, start to do in late high school was start to teach private lessons. It's a great way to make a little bit of money. It was a great way to kind of hone my skills as an educator and as a performer. I think when you teach lessons, it allows you to reflect on the things that you do technically, right? So I'm explaining things to a student, like, yeah, that's okay, yeah, that's how I do it. And it kind of allows me to self-reflect on my own playing too. I started teaching privately late in high school. Some of the music teachers that were in the district where I went, Wilson School District, recommended me for teaching some young students. And then I started in college. Over the summer, I would get a studio of about 6 to 8 students over the summer and teach them. And it was a great way for me. Like, my friends were, delivering pizzas and stuff like that, which is cool over the summer to do that. But I felt like teaching lessons was a way for me to use my skill sets that I was learning at college and to make a little bit of money as my job over the summer. So once I graduated from graduate school and from Duquesne, I decided to move back home, get my feet on the ground financially, and to start building a business as an independent musician. I made this decision because I already had a starting block. Right? I already had 6 to 8 students I could teach. I was doing some small gigs. I was also, hey guys, how's it going, buddy? I was also doing, I was teaching a couple drum lines, high school and college drum lines, so that was a way for me to kind of start getting some work and various things to do. And I think that's, as a freelance musician, you kind of have to cobble things together. You kind of have to gradually grab, do a little bit of this, do a lot of that, diversify, which I'm going to talk a lot about in this talk. I use this time also to gain a lot of connections. Like with the music world is all about gaining connections. You meet people, gain connections with other people, other ensembles, personal managers with orchestras and things like that. And also buy instruments and save money, right? Instruments are an investment, right? Instruments, look at all these instruments here, right? Instruments are an investment, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. After about 3 years, I purchased my own home in the Reading area, and it was a great starter home. I had my own private studio area in the lower level that allowed me to have, continue to teach lessons and actually build my studio to what it is now, which is a little bit over 20 private students. In terms of, let me see here. The first couple of years of my home, I was able to grow that studio to over 20 students. I was doing more gigs. I was doing more lessons, and I also started to work at some private schools. And I'm not sure if other musicians here can relate, but I think the hardest things for musicians to do is get daytime work. Like we're always getting work at like 3 p.m. and on, right? Like it's like we're working 3 to question mark a lot of times. So the hardest thing for me to do, I think, to build my career was to try to get work during the daytime. So I started off, like some of the first gigs I got during the day were like teaching at small private schools, because sometimes private schools in this area, like I taught at Lititz Christian School for several years, and some of them don't have like developed band programs, but they want to still offer the students a musical experience, so they'll bring specialists in to teach lessons. So it was a way for me to get work during the daytime. Yeah, even though that wasn't a ton of work, it was still a way for me to shift my career to some of that daytime work. Soon after that, I was asked to take over for professors that were stepping away from their positions at both Lancaster Bible College and Immaculata University, were the first two university and college jobs that I got. This began my career as an adjunct professor. Although this was not a lot of work, it was still experience and directing percussion ensembles, teaching lessons, and gave me a lot of experience working in colleges and universities. A couple years after that, it was brought to my attention that a job was opening up at Elizabethtown College. So even though I had these two jobs already, I was like, let me pursue this opening at Elizabethtown. And this was actually the first job that I actually interviewed for. Like I always had to do a small interview process to get these other jobs, but this is the first job that was like not just like, hey, it's a buddy that's stepping down. Do you want to do this? It's like, so I went through the whole interview process. I had to do a small recital during that interview process, teach a mock lesson to get that job, and I was lucky to get the job. I got that job I think back in 2016 or something like that, 16, 17. And again, even though that I wasn't taking over for somebody that was a friend of mine, it was still brought to my attention by people that I knew, right? So again, music connections that you find that you will have in the music community, and a lot of us know that already. And a few months after that, I was asked by some of my former teachers if I wanted to start teaching at my alma mater, which is Westchester University. And at first, for many years there, I teach a high school honors percussion ensemble there that is like county band or district band, but just percussion ensemble, and it rehearses once a week in the spring, and I've been directing that since its inception back in like 2012, and so I was doing that for a number of years, and then some things shifted in the school, and some credits opened up, and they asked me if I wanted to come and start teaching some of the classes, and since then I've tripled my credit load at Westchester, and I teach classes and lessons and other ensembles and things like that. So it's a real honor to be back there and working in my alma mater. During all this time of me developing my career as an educator and doing all these different teaching jobs, my freelance jobs started. My freelance playing jobs started to ramp up, and I was playing with other ensembles and other orchestras. I started playing with Reading Symphony and Lancaster Symphony and Allentown Symphony, and anything I could potentially do to diversify what I was doing in terms of teaching and playing. So that's a little bit about my story of how I got to where I am doing today. But some things that I learned along the way in terms of professionally, and some of you youngsters maybe don't have to worry about this quite yet, but maybe if you're thinking about having a career as a freelance musician or educator, these are some things that I learned that I think really helped me along the way. First, taxes are difficult. Right? That's very challenging. My tax guy does not like me. Yeah, he doesn't. I think last year I had 7 W-2s and like 8 1099s. So it's always a struggle to do, to say the least. But I think it's actually pretty common for people like myself that are freelancers, right? That do all these other things and cobble together their career. When I first started like my business, I was just at home living with my parents, teaching lessons, doing what I could to save money and saving as much as I could. And, making lessons, I would make a lot of cash and stuff like that. Then I went to buy a house, and I was like, here's all this money, give me a house. It didn't quite work that way. I had to start to declare more of that on my tax returns, and which then made me had to pay more taxes. And I actually had to pay quarterly taxes at that point, which was basically every quarter. Instead of just paying my lump sum in April like most people do, I had to start paying every quarter because it was a significant amount of tax that I had to pay in that money that I was making. So, so in terms of the taxes, the other thing that's beneficial to that is I could write more stuff off. Like having my own studio at home, I could write off things like actually the square footage of my tax guy takes the square footage of my studio, and things like my internet, things like my gas, my electric, portion of that can be written off. I also write off things for gigs like gas and mileage. I write off instruments that I buy, books. That's why I said instruments are an investment, right? Books, sticks. I said my water bill. I have a bathroom in my studio, so I can write a portion of that, not all of it, of course, but a portion of it that goes towards my business. I keep receipts for everything, right? I go on a gig, I buy a meal, receipt, right? Gas, receipt. I keep all those receipts so I can manage. I could be as organized as possible when tax season comes around, right? Because I'm being self-employed, being an independent musician. You're also like a business owner, right? You have to keep track of all those things and keep really good records. Good. I think I just read that. Okay, so finances, right? Being my own business owner, I don't have a business that's saving for my retirement, right? So I have to. I really soon after I started my own, business myself, I opened up an IRA. I don't want to talk about this too much, but we can have a whole session on finances probably as a musician. But an IRA is an independent retirement account, right? So I would recommend anybody that's going to go into business for themselves, especially as a musician, open up an IRA, right? Make sure you're starting to save because there's not a business or a company that's saving for you, right? So that you can put money in there every year to try to continue to save for your future. Have a separate credit card, maybe that you use that credit card to pay for gear, right? That you can use that to keep the track of where of things you're buying, and you can write that off in your taxes. Have a plan for paying off loans, right? Have a plan for paying off school loans, car loans, your house, all those types of things, right? As a business owner, as an independent musician, you have to think about all those business aspects. I really do feel like any student, like I was a music ed major, but if you're a music performance major, like I was music performance in grad school, I feel like everyone should have a business degree or should take business courses or should take entrepreneurial courses, because I think part of being a musician is being an entrepreneur. Part of being a musician is being a business person, right? Understanding the business aspect of things. So my schedule is nuts. Right, so there's one of the challenging things that I want to talk about now is how to manage a schedule as a freelance musician. When balancing multiple jobs, scheduling can be very challenging. For my lessons, I actually use an app. I'm not sure if you've heard about this. Anybody's heard about this? But it's an app called a QT scheduling system, and it's really cool. It's actually just like a scheduling calendar that you can use. Basically, it's an app. Students can check out my availability. They can sign up for a lesson. They can reschedule the lesson. They can cancel the lesson. And anytime they make a change, I'm notified, and it links to my private calendar. So for me, when I was starting to build my private studio, I had students and parents texting me all the time. Can I reschedule from Monday to Tuesday? Can I reschedule for this? This got me out of it. And just let the parents do it themselves, right? And the kids and the students, right? That way, I would, especially as I started teaching at colleges, I couldn't take all these texts every day, and be like, hey, like, how do I couldn't respond to all those texts about rescheduling. So the app allows parents and students to do it themselves, which changed the game for me. Overlapping schedule things, double booking can happen a lot. If I have a gig and then I have lessons that are scheduled, right, I have to go ahead and try to reschedule those lessons. So part about being doing what I do is also being really good at managing my calendar, right? I have a calendar on my phone, a calendar on my computer. Some people, I don't do this anymore, but like a physical calendar. Some people need to write it out, right? That's helpful to a lot of people to do that. So you need to be organized. Have an online calendar. I just mentioned that. Many times my scheduling for myself can be like a Tetris game, right? Just like all this moving around of everything. So as an independent musician educator, time is money, right? So make sure that when you are when you're doing this or when you're planning out what you're doing, like you could not take a gig. You could not schedule lessons on a certain day, and that's totally cool. Then you're not making money, right? That's the payoff, right? That's always the conundrum. And you know, the more older I get, right? I'm 38 years old. I have a wife and I have a 4-year-old daughter, right? Sometimes time is more important with them, obviously, right? So I've learned to kind of how to balance my workload with my time, my independent time. So the lifestyle of, am I good on time here?
You're fine.
I'm good? Okay,
good.
cool. Because I want to leave some time for questions if anybody has questions. Sure. But the last thing I want to talk about is, well, one of the last things is the lifestyle of being an independent musician. And it's not for everybody. If you walk out of here today and you're like, man, that guy does too much and it's too busy, it's like, it's not for me. Like, I'm not offended. I'm seriously not offended. It's cool. Like, do your thing. Do what makes you happy, right? Everybody all the time is always like, is your daughter going to play drums? Is your daughter going to be a percussionist? Is your daughter going to be a musician? It's like, I don't really care, to be honest with you. I just want her to be happy. Like, I want her to be doing what she loves. Like, I'm fortunate because I get to get up every day and work with, like, talented percussionists and motivated students and things like that and play with great ensembles and great musicians. Like, I just want my daughter to be happy doing what she's doing, right? And I think that's for anybody. I think anybody, if you're not into this, if you're not into being a freelance musician or like that, that's cool, right? Do it what makes you happy, right? So the lifestyle is not easy. I'd say, regardless of your career choice, you need to pick a job that you pick a spouse, someone that you are willing to spend the rest of your life with, somebody that you're willing to wake up to every single day. You need to be self-motivated. You must be willing to be patient with the process. It takes time to accumulate all these jobs over time. In addition, be ready to work weekends. Right, be ready to work weekends. When I'm not playing gigs on the weekends, I'm teaching lessons, and sometimes I'm doing both. Right, I'll teach lessons on a Sunday morning, leave to Philly, go play a gig, come home, maybe teach 2 more lessons before I'm done for the day. So it's a grind. It can be a grind. Be aware that you are the product of your business. Right, why should students and parents choose you to teach their kid? Why should somebody hire you to play the gig, right? You are the product here, right? So think about that in terms of what your business as an independent musician. So take that really seriously. I mentioned earlier, own your own instruments, okay? And here's why. Establishing your own private studio or for yourself or as an independent musician, you should consider purchasing many of your own instruments, right? Drums, etc. Right? This way, you have more to offer your private students, more gear, right? And you also have more to bring to gigs, okay? Many of the gigs that I play pay what's called cartage, if anybody's heard of cartage before, which is literally like if I play a gig for the Philly Opera, right? They'll pay me per instrument, X amount of dollars per snare drum. X amount of dollars if I'm bringing a drum set, X amount of dollars per timpani drum, right? Timpano, right? That I'm bringing. So cartage is a way for you to pay for your own instruments over time. I said instruments are investment. Yeah, artistically they're an investment because you need your instrument to play the music, right? But you also, if you play enough gigs, those instruments pay for themselves through cartage over time, or they can, right? Not all gigs are like that. Those things are negotiated a lot of times in union gigs, right? So if the ensemble is a union ensemble, then those things are negotiated through the union. I own a ton of stuff. I own like a marimba, vibraphone, xylophone, glockenspiel, 2 drum sets, because then when the students come to my studio to study, we have everything. I have 2 concert bass drums for some reason. I don't even know why I own 2 concert bass drums. I have a bunch of snare drums, things like that. Tambourines, triangles, everything, right? But that way I can use it for gigs. And if the student's working on a concert bass drum solo or something for band, dude, let's take out the concert bass drum and work on it, right? this title of this talk was diversifying, right? Diversifying your skill sets. I really, and this is the thing I really want to drive home, like diversify. If you're a drum set player, you're like, man, I just want to study drum set. That's cool, right? But then you're only going to be able to take drum set gigs, right? That's fine too. If that's all you want to do. But I think to be most successful as a freelance performer, you need to diversify your skill sets, right? Learn to play some mallet percussion, right? Say you get asked to play a musical at a high school or something like that, okay? And the book is drum set plus bells, right? Plus timpani, all there, right? You can't do those other things. You can't say yes to the gig. You can't say yes to the gig. You can't get money, right? You can't get employed. So diversifying the skills that you have allows you to say yes to more opportunities. And I think that's one thing I really try to drill and drive home to my college students is like, if you spend time, becoming well-rounded, the total percussionist, right? If you become a total percussionist, it allows you to say yes to more opportunity, which means a more diverse career for yourself, right? As a freelance musician. So don't limit yourself. Conclusion here. Just want to conclude this whole chat here, and I'll open up for some questions, right? I share this story, my story, like not to like show off like all this stuff I'm doing, but just show you an example of the process it takes to build your own business, right? Your own percussion studio. The truth is there's no true blueprint, right? It's not like you have to do it exactly the way I did it, right? To being successful. Being a self-employed musician rarely requires you to show up with a resume, letters of recommendation, a physical diploma, and say, give me a job, right? Whereas, other music jobs would. Like I have students that are music educators. They want to be a band director. They want to work as a music therapist. Those jobs, you have a interview process, and it's not always that easy as a freelance musician. You must be patient. You must be positive and willing to work hard. If you are a student who is working towards a music performance degree, do not factor out the possibility of teaching. Do not factor out the possibility of writing music. Do not factor out the possibility of working at a drum shop to supplement your teaching gig, right? You're performing as well, right? So I think the most success you could have is doing a little bit of all those things and diversifying. Okay, so that's it. That's my spiel, right? Thank you very much. So does anybody have any? I kind of went through all that really quickly, but does anybody have any questions at all about Adam?
First of all,
yeah.
This is my first time hearing about cartage.
Cartage.
Getting paid based on what you bring to the gig. Mm-hmm. As a rock and roll drummer, I feel gypped.
Yeah.
I feel personally.
Well, you got to talk to your union rep.
Yeah.
So
what is going on here?
Yeah,
that's amazing.
It is. It's great. It's great.
No,
I bought a
6 cymbals.
Yeah.
The hi-hat clutch.
Well, that's where I said, like, artistically it's an investment, right? And hopefully over time, with enough of those gigs, like, the drum kit will pay for itself, right? But then there's always upkeep. There's sticks. There's heads. And we're percussionists. We're gearheads, right? We're drummers. Like, we're always. I was here early so I could look at the gear because everybody wants to look at the gear, right? We love it. We love it because I own a bunch of stuff so I can use it, but I also own a lot of stuff because I like collecting stuff, right? I like collecting percussion gear. So that's part of it. But yeah, cartage is a wonderful thing, right? And like even if I'm playing an orchestra, they'll send me a list of how much they're willing to pay me per instrument. Like sometimes if it's small things like a triangle tambourine, they'll say miscellaneous percussion, which means you have to bring maybe like 5 of those smaller things to get $20 or whatever of cartage. But still, it's something, right? It's something that helps pay for those instruments. I bought one of those concert bass drums I bought like from somebody back in 2011 for like $100, which was super cheap, and it easily has paid for itself by now. I know lugging a concert bass drum is not easy, and I have a van that I drive that allows me to bring instruments, but it's helpful, right? Helps pay for the instruments over time. Yeah, great. Yeah, cartage. Yeah, it wasn't really a question. Great comment. Great complaint.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
So you're in the orchestral community,
mm-hmm.
and playing that and playing certain shows. That's like once you kind of get in that community, then you can get referred for other shows and other gigs and stuff sometimes.
Sure, yeah.
How did you initially get in? Like, what was your story on? Okay, this person recommended me, or I knew this guy from here.
Yeah.
How did you first get into that community?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there's a lot of in any music scene, and I'm sure it's even for like people that just play drum set in this area and things like that. Like you go to a gig, you meet somebody, they're like, hey, you got to play at this place, and you got to like then you network. Networking is, I would say, at least 85% of what we do as musicians, right? In terms of getting jobs. For orchestra gigs, like for me getting started, it was my teachers, like my professors that were saying, hey, you know, that maybe like play in an orchestra and say, I want to hire Brent to play with this week. And then with enough times going to that orchestra and playing, you know, you end up getting on their sub list, right? Whereas as an extra substitute to get called to play with those. And then basically then you meet the personal manager from that who knows this person, and before you know it, hey, they need a percussionist for this series. You know, that happened to me once, actually this past year. Example, I was playing a John Williams concert in Scranton with an orchestra. The one guy that was playing for me was a personal manager at Allentown Symphony, right? He's a percussionist. Allentown was putting on a John Williams concert like two months later. He called me up. He said, hey, do you want to play that show again together? I was like, sure. You know, he hired me for that one again. So it kind of is networking. And then once you play in these orchestras for long enough, as long as you continue to play well and come prepared and, you know, do your thing, right? You hopefully will continue to get asked back again, right? So part of it is a little stressful when that's concerned. You got to show up to the job. You got to know your stuff. You got to know the music. You got to be prepared, right? Or you're not going to be asked back again, right? So that's part of it. So like any gig, right? You want to be prepared. So cool. Hopefully that answered the question, kind of. Yeah. Any other questions? Young guys that are, yeah.
Yeah, sure. Adam stole my question right out of my brain, so I'll ask another one.
Yeah.
So with hustling all these jobs and,
yep.
and building yourself up, was there ever a point, or if there was, where exactly did you reach that point where you felt like you were somewhat stable? Because at the beginning of all that, you know, independent musicians know this, you know, trying to get gigs, trying to do that sort of thing, until you know, making rent can be kind of a
right. Yeah, kind
of hairy until you get some set down, and for different people the time frame's all different. So what was that like for you?
You're right. It's time frame is different for everybody, and I think it depends on, like I said, there's no blueprint, right? So it differs for every person. For me, I felt like when I was able to financially be independent was when I was able to buy my first house. That was like, for me, that was a big moment where I was like, I'm doing it. I figured it out. Like, I'm actually doing it. I'm able to support myself. Now I have a family. My wife's a teacher. She's not a music teacher, but like part of it is like I'm supporting myself, and I'm helping to support my family. Like obviously my wife works too. But for me, it was like the moment I bought my first house. And actually, I bought my first house teaching 0 colleges at the time. Was I making the kind of living I am now? No, but I was still making good enough living that I could purchase my first starter home, right? So that for me was a big moment. And at the time, I was just teaching a ton of lessons. I was doing some gigs. I was teaching 3 drum lines at the time, which drumline gigs are cool. I don't teach any drum lines anymore. I just don't have the time. It's like, and it's a lot of time and stuff like that to do that. But it's a good way to make connections with band directors, and it's a good way to make some extra money and things like that. But then as I started to grow, the college jobs that ended up being, and honestly, this is one thing I didn't mention. Medical insurance, right, for musicians is never easy. Almost like my retirement. No, I'm fortunate. I didn't mention this. I have retirement through Westchester University for teaching there, so I have a retirement from them. But my wife's medical insurance is so much better. So that she's a school teacher, so we're on her medical insurance. So part of that is challenging too. Like being a musician, like you got to think about your insurance. You got to think about your medical insurance and things like that. I was paying for my own insurance when I was younger, right? Before I got married, and it's expensive. Yeah, it's not cheap to do that, and it wasn't the greatest. But so yeah, that's part of luck, I guess, or just not understanding how to balance those things. But kind of off tangent to your response, but hopefully that's a little bit of a response. Yeah, cool. Anybody else have any questions? And yeah.
So you said
remind me your name again. You were at Total Percussion. Caleb. Yeah, good to see you again, buddy.
You too. You said you run a business. So how do you teach at colleges and like students if you run a business?
Well, my point for that is, I am a business, right? Managing all these things is like managing this shop. Like Adam has to manage the business, right? I don't work for one job that employs me, right? I work for many jobs, so I consider myself like, as self-employed. You're almost like a business owner of yourself. Right?
is your business.
Yeah, my business is
Oh.
being a musician, like a musician and educator full time. Yeah, so that is my business. A business of my private studio is a business. My gigging jobs are a business. My college jobs are part of my job. Like all of it is what I consider like my job or, you know, my career. That makes maybe more specific, but yeah, cool. Good question, though, Caleb. Appreciate it. Good to see you again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Cool.
Any
Yeah,
other questions?
No, we got
We're
a few
good?
minutes, and then Athena's going to come up here.
Okay.
But yeah,
Awesome.
we'll
Right.
go up here.
Well,
Thanks,
thank
man.
you, Adam, for having me.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, thank you guys very much.